Hi, we're back to talk politics on Birmingham View Television, and there's a lot to talk about considering the June 1st primaries and the very interesting results that happened there. And so we've got, of course, our handy-dandy, super-duper political consultant, Major Click, to talk to us about the political election. So, Harley, you know what we have to talk about. What happened with Artur Davis?
Oh, I think the congressman ran a miserable campaign. This was one of the greatest flops in recent memory.
Really?
I mean, he started out as the heads-on favorite. He is, in essence, this year's Hillary Clinton in Alabama.
What?
He came into this race the favorite. Mm-hmm. Then he, after his crucial vote against health care reform, that was devastating to him. Yeah. Then he alienated the various constituencies in the Democratic Party, whether it was the African-American groups such as New South Coalition, ADC, AEA. He seemed to turn his back on the base. He ran this campaign like it was a general election and not a primary.
That's exactly
and that was a lot of the problem.
And that was a lot of the problem. But at the end of the day, he knew he had to place a certain base. I mean, was this just ill-fated to begin with? I mean, could he just stayed where he was and done a better job? Or
absolutely. I think Congressman Davis is a plenty smart guy. He just didn't run this campaign the way it had to be run. And this is going to go down, I mean, as one of the greatest upsets in Alabama history, I think, because of the campaign he ran. I mean, this wasn't just a narrow margin. This was a pretty convincing defeat. I think when you get 60 to 62%,
wow, that's
voting against you, and the
especially
problem,
his own district,
exactly.
He lost 2-1 in the Black Belt. I mean, that was humongous.
And then you look at the national impact today. The national media is saying, Alabama didn't elect their first or didn't nominate their first black candidate. The thing that's being left out of this story on a national level is the fact that the people who turned their back on Artur Davis as much as anyone was the black community.
Thank you. So it wasn't rejection by the white voters. It was rejection by the black voters.
The white conservatives voted larger numbers for Artur Davis than the black community did.
Yeah, and like you said, he ran the primary races if it were the general election, and that was the key group. I think over the years, even Barack Obama, he had to play a certain distance from the black community because you can't be seen as the black candidate. You've got to be the candidate for all the people, and we know that. But healthcare, in so many ways, it transcends race. It really is not a racial issue, but it has been made that into by the crazy people on radio and TV talking about Obamacare. Right. When actually this was just maybe a watered down version of a Republican version of healthcare. And
Mitt Romney supported the same thing in Massachusetts, for God's sake. This was not an outrageous bill.
This is not some kind of socialist takeover. No. But because it was painted in that way, there was probably no way he could win. Had he voted for healthcare. But at the same time, and especially in the African American community, you feel that your vote is not important. So when somebody who looks like you and who's supposed to be representing you, this is the very thing that helps your people. I think it was just a portrayal that people just could not get past.
Yeah, I think you're right. And if we go back 10 years ago, we saw this with Congressman Davis. The first time he ran against then Congressman Hilliard, it was the same issue. I mean, almost, is he one of us? Can he relate to the black community? I mean, here's a Harvard-educated lawyer. And then at first there was some skepticism. He lost the first round. Then he comes back 2 years later and beats then Congressman Hilliard. Now we see again. Now a lot of people are telling me today everything we suspected about Artur Davis was right. He was a sellout all along. And so I mean, I think it's very interesting how this all unfolded. Unfortunate for him, but Commissioner Sparks now moves on to November after the Republican nominees determined in 6 weeks.
A lot of people call him a one-trick pony especially in terms of his bingo lottery type thing. I don't really know very much about him in terms of what his past has been in terms of, he was an agricultural commissioner, for God's sake, so it's not like he's got a big, long record of how he votes on certain things. But what is it that you see that he brings to the table, and can he, how well do you think he might do in the general election?
I think it's going to be an uphill battle for anyone in this political climate, honestly. But Commissioner Sparks is a strong candidate. His message is consistent. He resonates. He is one who transcends racial lines, as we saw in this election. He works well in the black community, and the rural white voters identify with Commissioner Sparks too, which is a crucial part of this election that's going to determine this. So I think, in terms of revenue, he's got an issue how we're going to find more money for schools, how we're going to fund transportation, how we're going to fund Medicare. He does talk a lot about gambling, and he said many times that's not the panacea for all of Alabama's problems.
I'm glad he said that because it sounds like it is. It's not.
It's only a step in the right direction, but he has said, if we're going to find additional revenue sources in the state without raising taxes, this is one thing we need to look at. And it's something I think that it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the fall.
Well, it will. And so how would that, speaking of the fall and the Republican side, I don't think it was very much of a surprise about Bradley Byrne, but Tim James just started shooting up with these ads about we speak English, only in Alabama, and I'm a businessman, common sense, all that kind of stuff. And it just really played well in the Peoria.
Does it to you? I think Tim James did play well. He played into the angry white male syndrome, is what I call it. The disenfranchised voter who feels like people don't connect with me, people don't understand me. I get up, I go to work every day, I do everything right, I pay my taxes.
Yes, sir.
And obviously this was a very targeted ad when he said this is Alabama, learn English. Someone made the great rebuttal. What about the Mercedes executives in Vance? What about the Hyundai people? These people are bringing in jobs, they're bringing economic development to this. So we know who he was appealing to. The dark horse here is Robert Bentley. Dr. Bentley stayed above the table. Yes, he ran a remarkable campaign.
Didn't hear a peep out of him.
You didn't. And now the man is theoretically in a runoff with Bradley Byrne, who the former Democrat, former chancellor, senator, school board member. It's going to be very interesting over the next 6 weeks to see how these two play it out.
So what messages do you think that people want to hear right now? Because you still have this, kind of reactionary against Barack Obama. They want to do you think the Tea Party type mentality is going to really play itself out here? And also because, this played out on a national stage, it looked like we've rejected, a black candidate. It looks like we've got an arch conservative who wants to protect English only. Is this going to impact the way the businesses that we can attract to Alabama? What do you think this governor has got to say in order to first get elected, but then also bring those people to Alabama?
He's got to say Alabama is a part of a larger picture. It's a part of the U.S. It's a part of the world. Like you hear Commissioner Sparks. It's part of his job as agriculture commissioner. He traveled around the world. He went to Cuba. He opened industry there. Yeah. So Commissioner Sparks has already begun reaching outside of Alabama, and I think Bradley Byrne has done a good job of reaching out, saying he immediately sent out a rebuttal to what Tim James had to say, saying Alabama is open to everyone. This is a state that welcomes people. We're an inclusionary state. Yeah. And so if Tim James does make the runoff, which I'm seeing right now, he's probably not going to make it, and it's probably a good thing for Alabama if the truth being known from a business perspective.
Now we rejected the first black African, the first black governor. Now this guy, that could be
the first conservative businessman who wants everyone speaking English. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Dr. Bentley can keep the momentum going into the runoff. I don't know that he can. Bradley Byrne has the business community behind him, and this is going to be an interesting showdown because Dr. Bentley took votes that would have gone to Bradley Byrne, I think, from what I'm seeing. Because Tim James and Roy Moore were appealing to the social conservatives. Bradley and Dr. Bentley were appealing to the business conservatives, and turnout's going to be the issue. In 6 weeks, you're looking at who comes back. It's going to be the base of the party, and they're business people, so you have to think Byrne has this race to lose at this point.
You think so? So has he hasn't really made any really major flaws right now, except, and depending on how you look at it, his attack on the AEA, and I know that's rattling a whole lot of cages when it comes to the teachers. As much as we talk about the AEA's control over the state, teachers are looking at jobs right now, and they're very nervous about the proration. He's rattling a saber over the education system and how it works in Alabama.
And you bring up an excellent point. The question then becomes, do these teachers cross over and vote for Robert Bentley, assuming that he is the one in the runoff with Bradley Byrne? There's a very high possibility. I've heard a lot of Democrats say, if Robert Bentley's the candidate, Ron Sparks becomes a stronger candidate because the Sparks-Byrne race is harder to win than the Sparks-Bentley race because the name ID is not there. Ron Sparks has won 2 statewide races already. Robert Bentley's won a legislative race in Tuscaloosa. So I think as a Democrat, you would want to see Ron Sparks face Robert Bentley. Bradley Byrne's going to be an uphill, but it'll be a formidable race.
And then you have the bingo people. They're worried about whether Byrne will support the situation. And so I heard I've been reading on AL.com, some other places, that he's Riley light. Is he going to come in?
He's the hand-picked heir by Bob Riley. Okay. It's been a well-kept, well, maybe not a well-kept secret, but it's known in political circles that Bob Riley wanted Bradley Byrne to run, and he has said that he's against gambling. And I suspect, I don't know if he would continue the asinine raids we've seen out of this administration, but I think we would certainly see some anti-gambling legislation proposed. Once and for all to close down bingo halls, which have been a source of revenue in many small communities that so desperately needed it.
Are we talking about closing it down, or are we talking about regulating it? Because at least, like I said, it won't solve all the problems, certainly, but at least it is bringing, whole cities have got the economy based on bingo, and it's helping them in a very tough time.
And that's what Commissioner Sparks, when people listen to him, that's what Commissioner Sparks has said. He said gambling is not his personal form of recreation, but some people do gamble. And he said that we ought to at least regulate it and tax it. And that's the whole issue. And if Byrne is not even open to regulating and taxing it, he just wants to close it down, what are going to be his alternative sources of revenue for the state going forward?
Maybe
that's the question.
Oil is spilling to the Gulf.
Last night I thought Sparks did a great job when he said, BP, we're coming after you. He looked straight into the camera and he said, BP, we're going to hold you accountable. You're going to clean up this Gulf and you're going to pay for it. We're going to lift the liability cap. And so I thought that was really profound. And I think that resonated with a lot of people along the Gulf Coast. Bradley's from Baldwin County. So hopefully people saw that Ron Sparks really understands the crisis that we're now facing in the Gulf.
And it's a serious crisis.
It really is.
So we're going to take a little bit of a break right now and come back and talk more about the 7th Congressional District, because now that Artur is gone, I think those people have sent a very strong message. What kind of person needs to be in charge of the 7th Congressional District? And so we're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more, and we're also going to have Ms. Sheila Smoot to talk about her candidacy in the 7th Congressional District. Birmingham View Television will be coming back to you right after this.